In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. If we think about some of the most memorable speeches that we've heard, whether it's from a president or some other figure, we recall the words and we recall the feeling of how that speech came across. Same thing with sermons. Sermons, we can remember the good ones, and we can also remember the bad ones. And today, I wanted to recall with you one of the bad ones that I heard many years ago that kind of stuck with me and made me think of how I should preach to you continually. And that sermon that I heard, I remember I was a teenager, and I was in church, and I was in the altar, and I remember hearing a guest priest come to the church and start berating the community for the people who weren't there, and saying, "Where is everyone? Why are they not here?" And keep going through it. Now, the people who were there were kind of like looking around like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm here. And I think that is the important message, that I am here when we hear something like that. So I've always had that in the back of my head as something that I would not say to you, and I don't think I ever have. If I have, you can call me out on it, but I don't think I've ever begrudged any of you for not being here when you're here. And the reason I say that is because the church is not about yelling. It's not about fighting. In fact, Christ reminds us yesterday in the gospel that the church, and his burden is light and his yoke is easy. It's light and easy. What does that mean for us? That means that the church is here for us in a manageable way. Not something that breaks us, not something that's supposed to just condemn us, but as a tool, a gift, a holy resource for us in order to become closer to God. It is a vessel of salvation. It is the boat that you are on. We're all facing the same direction, riding in this naos, which is the community, the name of the church itself, which is the boat that leads to salvation. We're all in the same ship, rowing and moving our way closer to God. So why do I bring this up about what we are and that I am here, and not about yelling about the people who aren't here or the things that we don't do, but the things that we can do? Is because tomorrow starts Great Lent. And I know Great Lent is a time where we just hear the word and we go, oh, for many people. I know it because I hear you say it, and I see people even shaking their heads going, yep, that's it. That's when we eat newspaper and glasses of water, and we come to communion dizzy and nauseous, and we're so tired, and nothing tastes good, and we have to eat the stuff. We have to eat grass that Yaya makes and all this kind of, and everybody has this notion that Lent is this horrible time when we suffer. And it doesn't have to be like that. Lent is supposed to be a time where we transform ourselves, not destroy ourselves, and not become people who look at Lent and say, why? Why is this even necessary? Because if it becomes that disposition and that understanding of why is Lent necessary, then we're not doing it right. Now, I remind you again that yesterday the gospel reading said, Christ says, take my burden upon you and my yoke, for it's light and easy and manageable. But then when we look at Lent and we think about some of the things that we do to ourselves on purpose, some things that we do to ourselves on accident during Lent, it becomes very unmanageable and very unprofitable and undesirable. And we spend Lent sometimes thinking about, oh man, I can't wait till I have that burger again. You drive down the street, you pass Portillo's that I think just has a fan that pumps out their smell of their charbroil going, and you drive down and you're like, oh, it's only 3 more weeks, and we count it down. But it doesn't have to be like that. Now, how does it not have to be like that? How can we make it better? How can we make this Lent a better Lent for all of us? Is to think about what you do and try and make a small change. Not a massive change. Don't come out and say, don't use this as a weight loss program. and say, by the end of the 40 days, I'm going to trim off 26 pounds that I needed to get rid of, and I'm going to feel so much better. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to stop drinking. My language is going to be better. I'm going to be trim. I'm going to exercise every day. And then 3 days later, you're going to be a wreck. You're going to be sitting in front of the TV with a big bowl of ice cream, gorging yourself, going, why did I even do that? Because sometimes people do too much right off the bat and can't maintain that focus, that drive, that necessary discipline to change. Now, when it comes to food, we as Americans are very overindulgent with food. However, we are not by any means undernourished. So when it comes to fasting, the baseline, if you want to call it that, or the beginning of fasting, would be starting with meat. However, if you have not fasted at all during Lent, like I said, come talk to me so I can give you a regimen that will work for you. Something that's not unbearable and something that is not achievable. I mean, something that's achievable that's not going to take you and just smash you to the ground and make you resent Lent. But something that's doable. Something that can cause you to create some discipline of what you eat, so we can control, as Christ says, what goes into our mouths, so we can control what comes out of our mouths. And also, the other part of that is, fasting without prayer is pointless. That's a weight loss program. And prayer without fasting is ineffective. So we have to do the two of those things together. Fasting. During Lent, discipline what you eat, but also make the effort to participate in the extra services so that you can continue to realize that relationship with God that you are working on through fasting is growing, and that you have these other opportunities to speak to God and to grow with Him. However, there's another dimension that I think when it comes to fasting, and I think it's such a broad spectrum and a daunting thing to think about that sometimes we don't even do it. We just say, it's too much. I'm not going to do it. But there's also, in addition to the eating, is our actions. Our actions are critical to try and make a difference in our lives for the Lenten season. So what does that mean? For you, for all of you, I would not suggest that you tackle every single issue that you have during Lent. Everybody has something. If you don't have something wrong with yourself, then you're not looking hard enough. But we all have something that we're wrestling with, something that we're dealing with, some issue, some compulsion, some addiction, some abuse, some neglect. We all have something. Pick one thing to focus on during Lent and work on that and push towards it and go at it full speed, just the one thing. Don't try and tackle everything at the same time. You can only do one thing at a time during Lent, I believe, effectively, and then work. If you do it this year, say you're trying to stop a certain behavior, work on it this Lent. The next Lent, work on a different behavior. And if you keep maintaining your schedule of prayer and your schedule of discipline, you won't have to revisit whatever you worked on now. It will be fixed, it'll be completed, it'll be better, and then you can focus your energy on something else at the next Lenten season and throughout the entire year, not just during Lent, but throughout the entire year, to focus on things that we need to refine, hone, redirect, cut out, change, add, whatever it is. We have to think about that one thing and make sure it's something that is, with your effort, manageable. Not something that's going to completely destroy you, but something that's manageable, so that it's not just fasting and what we eat that becomes a manageable discipline, but also how we behave that becomes manageable, our behaviors that we're trying to change that might be a manageable behavior. Something that's not, St. Basil says that the worst sin that we have is the sin we can't stop doing. So it might not be this greatest sin, but if we have something that we can't stop doing, we need to really examine that and say, are we in control of what we can't stop doing? Or is the thing that we can't stop doing in control of us? Are we really in control of our lives? And the only way we can come to understand what fasting means for us as a discipline of food, a discipline of behavior, and a discipline of change is to really understand where we are. So I ask you, for the remainder of this liturgy, just think about these things. Think about what you can do that's manageable as a beginning towards even stronger things. I remind people all the time that if you run to the gym and think you are going to be completely toned and muscular in one particular weightlifting session, you will probably be at the orthopedic surgeon by the end of the week. Something will go wrong. Something will break. So it's about growth, about starting small and working ourselves to something that's great. And the beautiful thing about it is when you think about what you eat today, outside of Lent, you all started eating from a small age liquid. Then you were introduced to ground up food, and then small pieces of hard food, and then eventually the food that you eat today. You were weaned into a full diet. You weren't just given a steak as a 40-day-old baby. You were given things that you could process, things that you could use to help you grow stronger, and you don't even realize that growth and that transition. You just think about where you're at today and say, yep, this is things that I can do. Walking is a classic example of that too. We start out being carried, then we crawl, then we have that jiggle-legged, hands up in the air, holding on to our parents, going like this. You've seen all those kids, they look like they're doing a dance because their knees aren't quite strong enough and their legs can't hold them up. And then we walk, and then some of us run, and then we end up lifting up the small to help them to walk, or the elderly. So the same thing happens with Lent. We start out small and we work towards something bigger. But we have to start somewhere. We can't just ignore it. We can't say fasting is something that's optional. We have to start in a position that is manageable, doable, but a challenge for us too, in a way that is capable of being achieved. So if you have questions about Lent, about fasting in any way, for your kids, for yourself, for a relative, whatever, please let me know. Please let me know. Not so that, contrary to what some people might think, oh, if I ask the priest about fasting, he's going to say, do all this, and by the end I'm going to be, dead. That's not what it's about. That's not what the church is about. The church is about helping us grow, helping us develop in a way that is manageable and helpful for us. So the burden is easy and the yoke is light, but it's something that we have to put on and something that we have to use in order to grow, and especially during the Lenten seasons. Amen.